Most people think Ed Sheeran just got lucky, but if you look closer, nature gave him a brutal stutter and a thin voice.
Talking like that.
But he didn't wait for a miracle. He built a secret system to fix what words could not. He turned a cold subway floor into a sold-out stadium stage. And this is the blueprint he used to do it. It wasn't that he couldn't speak, it's that his words always seemed to stumble over themselves, like his tongue had a mind of its own.
I didn't know that you were born with this birthmark on your face, and then by accident, they didn't give you anesthesia, and they literally hurt you so bad when they were trying to burn this thing off that it caused you to stutter.
Yeah, I think it messed with my nervous system.
Speech therapy helped, sure, but it felt like trying to untangle a ball of yarn with your eyes closed. Then, out of nowhere, something clicked. It wasn't a speech exercise or a lesson. It was the Marshall Mathers LP. Ed started rapping along, again and again, until the words stopped tripping him up.
It's a funny one, that, because when I was 9, I was going through all sorts of speech therapy, and when I was 9, my uncle bought me the Marshall Mathers LP, and he just said to my dad, "This guy's the next Bob Dylan, you got to let him listen." My dad didn't really clock it, you know? He was just like, okay, Edward's going to go and listen to that. And by learning that record and rapping it back to back to back to back, it cured my stutter, and I stopped, talking like that.
Rhythm gave his voice a way through. For Ed, this wasn't just about learning the lyrics. It was about finding a way to use his voice. Years later, standing beside Eminem at a concert, Ed would quietly realize the man who helped him speak never knew he was teaching him how.
And he asked me to play Stand with him at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Even as Ed stood next to the legend, the question was simple. What happens when music fixes something that words cannot? That borrowed rhythm was the first step toward everything else, validating his core philosophy. Persistence is more important than talent.
It's drowning in alcohol.
He had gained his why, the unyielding conviction that this path of persistence was the only one worth pursuing. This conviction had been crystallizing thanks to a deep dive into the work habits of the industry's elite. He had been studying Max Martin, the Swedish songwriter and producer whose approach to pop was a revolutionary, almost engineering-like process known as melodic math. Martin analyzed what made the songs stick, adhering to principles like ensuring the chorus hit within the first 50 seconds and carefully balancing the number of syllables in mirrored lyrical phrases. It was Martin's sheer volume of output, governed by this repeatable, almost scientific formula that provided the key insight. The world class are not necessarily better, they are just more prolific. That massive realization shattered any remaining hesitation Ed held. He knew what he had to do. And the writing process became a necessary excavation rather than an act of creation. This early volume of work was the direct result of his dare to suck philosophy. The acceptance that the inevitable garbage songs, the first 20, 50, or even 100 attempts, must be written and discarded quickly, accepting that quantity must precede quality. The songs were written, but the reality of performing them required a different kind of strength. As a teenager, Ed's voice was shaky and thin. His acoustic guitar completely exposing his lack of musical power. He was armed with conviction, but unarmed in skill. The official system offered no help. Mr. Hanley, his high school music teacher, could provide encouragement, but he couldn't provide a map. Knowing the true lessons lay elsewhere, Hanley signed the early release forms for Ed's London gigs. The cruelest judge remained in the audience. Absolute silence. It offered no critique, no direction, just a vast, empty vault, waiting to see if he would finally give up. Ed needed an orchestra, but was broke and alone. The answer was a digital chorus, the Boss RC30 loop station. This machine was survival. It was a mechanism for multiplication, cloning his sound to give his thin voice muscle. He stacked his resources, using the borrowed rhythm to create a percussive beat and a synthetic bass line.
How'd you get into the looping machine?
I went to go and see a band that I loved when I was about 14, and the guy was opening up for them, a guy called Gary Dunn, and he was sort of hitting his guitar and recording it, and it sounded like a drum. And I remember watching it being like, that looks really cool, and also he doesn't need a band. And at the time, like, I wasn't like the coolest kid and people didn't want to be in a band with me, so
The result was the pocket-sized orchestra emerging from a single gray box. The loop pedal transformed him into a self-sufficient sonic architect, finally granting him the how. With his new sound secured, Ed left the empty venues. He began busking in the busy streets of London, setting a metrics-driven goal to play 312 gigs in a single year. This rigorous schedule was a deliberate attempt to beat an industry benchmark, a sheer volume of output engineered not to seek permission, but to manufacture irrefutable proof of his endurance and drawing power. The indifference of the crowd became the ultimate, relentless barrier to overcome. When you are so intensely focused on producing proof for the world, how do you know deep down when you have finally convinced yourself?
And I'm only going over home.
The streets became Ed's aggressive, metrics-driven training ground. Before his major label debut, he released 5 independent EPs, building a public portfolio of failure that proved his commitment to volume and consistency, a success built brick by brick. Each gig, each recorded EP, each failed song was a necessary foundational unit. No single breakout moment was expected, only sustained, incremental growth was required. This unrelenting grind, often spent homeless and sleeping on the London Underground, finally landed him in Los Angeles in 2010. His momentum was salvaged by Jamie Foxx. One night, Ed was playing a near-empty open mic night, the kind of room where the bartender was the only actual listener. Jamie Foxx, a musician and performer who had lived the struggle and recognized the cost of the grind, was seated in the shadows. Foxx recognized the specific skills forged by hardship, the relentless practice, the perfected loop, the mastery of the 12-minute set, and saw past the skepticism in the crowd. All the months Ed spent playing to indifferent listeners, often just 1 or 2 people, had prepared him to win over the room in 12 minutes, earning a standing ovation.
I have this thing where I always have people at my house. I had Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran came. Ed Sheeran slept on my couch for 6 weeks.
This intervention bought Ed the most precious resource, time not to disappear. The time bought him space to write. Playing a gig at a homeless shelter, Ed channeled painful reality into the A-Team. It started small, but the song's authenticity made it a juggernaut. It slowly climbed to number 16 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and earned a prestigious Ivor Novello Award for songwriting. Now sitting at over 380 million YouTube views, the song stands as a victory for his core creed. Success is built upon a foundation of trial and error. The A-Team shattered expectations, launching a trajectory that bypassed the standard climb and went straight for the stratosphere. As the venues swelled from shelters to arenas, the air grew dangerously thin. Survival at this altitude required a heavy anchor. That stability came from 2 distinct forces. The first was Elton John, the navigator of this rarefied air. The music legend became a constant voice in Ed's ear, offering a map through the minefield of burnout and teaching him the art of the long game. The second force was his childhood friend turned wife, Cherry Seaborn. In the quiet of their shared history, she created a sanctuary where the global icon dissolved, leaving only the man from Suffolk. With his foundation secured, Ed abandoned the safety of his acoustic roots. He walked into the studio and wagered his credibility on a marimba-fueled pop track called Shape of You. It was a gritty victory for his dare to suck philosophy. A 1 in 5 gamble where 4 songs had to die so this monster could live. Today the numbers are staggering, the highest grossing tour of all time, 4 diamond albums, but the true spectacle is the sight of a single man standing alone in the center of Wembley. The pocket-sized orchestra, built on that handy loop pedal, now commands the atmosphere of stadiums.
the part that most people think is the thing that they want, whereas I think if you do what you love every day, that's actually what you should aim for, basically.
Just like Ed's story, growth is about finding the right tools and the right support, no matter how long it takes.
With Winnie's vocal coaches, you get the expert methodology to master your own loop. For more stories of perseverance and mentorship, hit subscribe.